Morning to you, Kinsey.
Hi, such sad news today. I think that Americans are really devastated by this loss. This is a show that is constantly on rotation here in the States. And this is an individual that really kind of stole the show. People love Matthew Perry. He seemed genuine and kind and funny. And I can't remember, I was watching something recently about how the writers would go to him and ask him to make a joke work and how effortlessly he did that. You know, Julia Roberts falling in love with him over fax machine flirts. He just seemed like such a great guy. And in my research of him over the last few hours, I cannot believe he was never married. How? Because when I grew up, all I wanted to do was marry Chandler Bing. So it really surprises me that he never, actually took that leap.
Well, a lot of girls that I knew who were big Friends fans always thought that he was the best looking out of all of them. They always had the biggest crush on Chandler.
Not only that, but he was the only one that successfully took off as a movie star in the male department. Ross and Joey are great, but it was Matthew Perry that was the movie star after that success of Friends.
And because there would have been periods in his life where, had you heard that he had come to a tragic end, it would have been less surprising because of his well-known and well written about and admitted to drug, opioid, alcohol addictions. But he seemed to be in quite a good place. He seemed to have actually conquered all of that in recent years, right?
I mean, 2 hours of pickleball earlier today. Yeah, I mean, he was physically exerting himself. He was challenging himself. And I agree with you. There was so much hope after the release of his book that was in the past. You had so many people come out and champion for him after the release of his book and talk about his strength. It was in 2011 where he went and actually spoke to the White House about how he felt like we should decriminalize addiction, that there was a huge difference between some of the people that were locked up and just that vulnerability and the sickness that is addiction. So I do think that we're very surprised, we're devastated, and nobody reading this headline today thought, oh, that makes sense. Everybody reading this headline today said, oh my God, no, not Matthew.
And a lot of people speculate, which isn't always helpful, but a lot of people are speculating, myself included, I have to be honest, that it while it doesn't seem like it's something sinister, that having put his body through so much, and even in recent years he had to have a massive surgery where he was only given a 2% chance of survival, where they had to essentially rebuild his colon because of the fact he'd taken 1.55 prescription drugs, Vicodin, a day. It would seem sadly logical that there is a connection between him perhaps losing his life as a result of his body having been put through so much.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable speculating, but I have seen reports that the initial call that was made, aside from the drowning, might have mentioned perhaps some sort of heart issue, whether that's a heart attack or I don't know.
Well, just to jump in, a lot of the time they will say, the law enforcement will say it was a cardiac arrest, because however one might lose their life, it's always a cardiac arrest. Do you know what I mean? So it being a cardiac arrest doesn't necessarily mean it was a cardiac arrest. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you said it earlier, but multiple entities that were on the scene said that there were no drugs found.
Yeah.
So that's important to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. But it doesn't look like there's anything suspicious at the moment. It might have just been some sort of just tragic episode of some kind.
it makes me so sad that somebody that brought so much joy to the world. And I mean, in the darkest of times, I've had people reach out to me and say, I was sitting alone in my bedroom and I've never felt lonelier and I didn't want to live. And it seems silly that a character on television can lift you up. But to me, that's what television is for. I hope that that's what shows like Friends, can do.
And of course, let's not forget as well the number of people, and I've got a couple of tweets to this effect this morning, that would have been helped by the fact that he then spoke so much about this. I mean, in his memoir, Friends, Lovers and the Big Terrible Thing, a memoir, he speaks really openly about how, there are certain episodes of Friends where he was puffy and fat. Well, that meant he was an alcoholic. When he was particularly thin, that meant that he was on various different prescription medications. Really open about the fact that he'd been to rehab 17 times. That would have helped an extraordinary amount of people that he was so candid about that, because a lot of stars, they go out the limelight and they say it was a mystery illness, or they're taking time off to be with family, whereas he put it out there, right?
Yeah, but I think the point I was going to make is he helped so many people he didn't realize he'd helped. And you're right, it's through that book. He sold 96,000 copies of that book within, days of its release in November of 2022. But I think my point was to die alone when you put so much good out into the world, when you did help people heal, and when you did make people laugh and smile. I think what breaks my heart is that his last few moments were alone.
True, but then also, and you're right, it's absolutely tragic, but his last post on Instagram was him in his happy place in his jacuzzi, sort of overlooking LA, and although it is absolutely tragic and he was of no age, at least he was somewhere where he obviously felt happy and was at peace, which was, in his jacuzzi and seemingly relaxing and enjoying life. Now, reactions, I saw that Morgan Fairchild, who played his mother in Friends, she's sent a tweet about this saying, I'm heartbroken at the untimely death of my son, in inverted commas, Matthew Perry. The loss of such a brilliant young actor is a shock. I'm sending love and condolences to his friends and family, especially his dad, John Bennett Perry, who I worked with on Flamingo Road and Falcon Crest, because, of course, his father was a famous actor, wasn't he?
Yes, from Canada. And then here in the States, his stepfather is a huge celebrity. He is a true crime documentary reporter. His name's Keith Morrison. And actually, he spoke about Matt not too long ago to People magazine. And he said something so sweet. Let me pull it up. He said that he called Matthew remarkable. He said, we love having him around, which is devastating to read out loud, after this news. But he called Matthew an intense, talented, focused character, which I thought was beautiful. And so if you're in the States, you'll recognize Keith from Dateline NBC every Friday. He covers true crime here, and it's a major show. But I also saw a tweet let me pull this tweet up. It was a brilliant picture of River Phoenix with Matthew Perry. And it's from Meredith Saliger, and it says, oh, no, Maddie. Oh, man, my heart breaks. Maddie, Matthew, and I have known each other since we were 16 years old. No words. Rest in peace, sweet Matthew Perry. And it's a broken heart. And then beautiful pictures of their friendship throughout the years. But this fabulous photo of the three of them with River Phoenix, who he spoke of lovingly in his book as well.
I mean, to what extent would you say that Friends, obviously all six of them played their part in it, but I'm just reading some tweets in reaction just from randoms at the moment, and there's one here which is interesting, saying that Friends actually owes a substantial part of its success to Matthew Perry because he had a vital ingredient that was the sarcasm, that was you know, that voice that none of the others had in it. Do you think Friends would have been such a success without him?
No. And again, like I really wish I could remember the exact scene so I could give you the example, but it was a video I recently watched about they did a test run in front of the audience. The joke that the writers had written fell flat. So all of the writers gather around Matthew and say, how do we make this funnier? Matthew comes up with, you know, a zinger. They do the exact same scene, but Matthew drops his one-liner in and the audience erupts. So he really was the key to the show's success. I mean, obviously there was the will they, won't they with Ross and Rachel, but I do think when it came to the humor, he was a very strong element within that program. And I don't know if we'll hear from those cast members immediately, because I truly believe that they are devastated. That was a group of individuals that experienced something so radical together. They were the most famous people on the planet, on the #1 show. It was probably like a spiritual experience, them being on this incredible show. And I think that they really loved each other.
It was a true... Well, I think shows like that work, you know that I always return to Dallas when I think about successful TV shows. And the reason that shows like that was the biggest show at one point, Friends, biggest show at one point, when it's a true ensemble and the cast really trust each other and actually adore each other and know their characters inside out, it pops out on screen. And that's absolutely... I was never a massive Friends fan, but I always appreciated actually how great the acting was in it. They were all a really great bunch of actors, and he was an absolutely brilliant actor. So as you've alluded to, we haven't heard anything from any of the other cast of Friends other than sort of guest stars, Morgan Fairchild and a couple of others, but none of the main cast have said anything yet.
Yeah, and I think that they're just in shock. I imagine that they are wrapping their arms around each other quite literally right now. Like I said, Rachel, Monica, you know, Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox, and Lisa Kudrow, these are all people that are best friends, godmothers to their children, and see each other on a regular basis. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were curled up on a couch right now in tears. And yeah, that's heartbreaking to imagine. I don't think we'll hear from them immediately, because I think that they need time to process and they want to be respectful of this. But Friends was definitely his breakout role. But don't forget, he was on massive shows like Growing Pains. He was on Beverly Hills 90210. He was on The West Wing. This was an incredibly talented man. And thankfully, Friends was that big break that turned him into struggling actor, from struggling actor into massive movie star.
Yeah, that's the other interesting thing about Friends, is that they'd all been nearly famous before they got Friends. They'd all done their time on TV shows, that some of which had been big, but some of which they hadn't been particularly successful themselves on them. And Friends was the thing that just catapulted them into stratospheric fame. Presumably, this is a massive story over there. I mean, is it wall to wall on a lot of the news outlets?
Yes, this is there's a real sadness surrounding this death. And again, I think it's because he reached through people's television screens and touched their heart, whether he knew it or not. Even when he was struggling, and you talked about the bloat, we now know that he was secretly dealing with Vicodin addictions and other things. Even dealing with his own personal demons, he doesn't realize how many people he touched through his comedy and through his humor. And I think that that's why people are so negatively affected by this. And it is one of those things where you start to remember watching the show with your best friends, or where you were during the finale, and people are talking about that. And can I just say, my favorite Matthew Perry movie is 17 Again with Zac Efron. If you haven't seen it, please rent it, please watch it. It's brilliantly written, it's absolutely hilarious, and it is just so precious.
Well, there's a really interesting quote here from Variety that I think we should just end on, which is, Friends wouldn't have been Friends without Matthew Perry. Variety, of course, which is the big trade magazine for Los Angeles, a movie and TV industry. Friends wouldn't have been Friends without Matthew Perry, and neither would have been, as time went by, American culture. The actor who infused the hit show with its vital, sustaining dose of sarcasm went on in recent years to publicise his sobriety and his work, bringing others out of addiction through the founding of a sober living house. His death at 54 in an apparent drowning comes as a shock, in part because Perry seemed to have a second act lying ahead of him, which is, of course, incredibly sad because I think, again, he probably did have a second act. You know, he'd got himself together. It appeared that he was in a much better place, and that's what happened. OK, Kinsey, maybe we should move on and do a couple of the other stories that you are well known for wanting to talk about. And so we have a new trailer for The Crown.
Yes, but I just want to know what you think. Didn't I DM it to you? You didn't respond. So that's all I here are my notes. Cristo, what did you think about the trailer?
Well, we've
my mind
got
is
some
blown.
of it. I think we've got a little bit of it. We haven't got any audio, so we'll talk over it as it comes along. I think I was blown away by it because it's. I mean, my God, they're not letting Diana rest in peace in any way, shape, or form when it comes to this trailer. They have her sitting on the yacht. They have her sort of getting into the Mercedes. They have the outfits down to a T. They have all of these elements. They have her walking through the landmines. They have the front pages where it's the kiss. They have a showdown between her and the Queen. I mean, they have not left one area of Diana's life unmined for this trailer.
It's interesting to me that the first thing you said is that they will not allow this woman to rest in peace, Cristo, because on the Crown's Instagram account, they've got a beautiful photo of Elizabeth Debicki as Diana, and the caption reads, "All one wants is for that girl to find peace." Come on. All one wants is for that girl to find peace. It just seems a little contradictory to what we're witnessing here.
I mean, is it a bit too soon? I mean, you and I have spoken before about whether actually it should have stopped after season 4. Because, you know, her and Charles meeting and their marriage starting to break down, we know the rest of what happened after that. Would it have been better being 4 seasons or maybe 6 seasons, but starting, you know, with the actual Wallace and Edward era, and doing a couple of earlier seasons, because those early seasons were phenomenal. You know, is it all still a little bit too raw for them to be coming up to such recent history?
Yeah, because it's not just the abdication that's fascinating in that time period. You also had Elizabeth Bowles-Lyon, which is the Queen, inevitably the Queen Mother, who did not want to marry Bertie, Queen Elizabeth's father. She rejected him a lot. She rejected him multiple times. So to watch that navigate that relationship, you reject this man on multiple occasions. You finally break down and marry him. And oh my God, now you're the queen. Sounds like you took the right direction, right? Should they have stopped at 4 seasons? Yeah.
And also the Second World War, them living through the Blitz, their refusal to leave Buckingham Palace, ending up in that position as a result of the affair between Edward and Mrs. Simpson, and all of the controversy in the Crown nearly imploding as a result of the abdication. All of that stuff was so fascinating.
Yes.
And I wonder whether it would have been wiser to have started the series a bit earlier and then ending it at the point where Charles and Diana have been together for a while, but the end of season 4, I don't know. But then I suppose if I was Netflix, I'd be thinking there is an entire generation of people, you know, up to the age of 30 probably, who aren't as aware of those final years between Charles and Diana, who perhaps don't remember quite what it was like, and when Diana died, and Netflix reliving that is giving it to that audience. You know, not everyone's as old as us.
Here's why they're not stopping it at the end of season 4, because Charles is the hero in the season, Cristo. It comes full circle. Camilla gets her time to shine. King Charles, Prince Charles in season 6 is the hero that goes head to head with the Queen about how they should respond to Diana's death, when in reality we know it was really Tony Blair that kind of pushed the envelope, but it looks like they're going to allow Charles to be the good guy in this. And I figured that's how everything would come to fruition, because Dominic West is a patron for the Prince's Trust. There's no way he's going to take a role that is disparaging towards the king. So I thought, I'm just going to sit back and see how this all unfolds, because Dominic West is not going to jeopardize his relationship with the king and the Prince's Trust by being a total jerk in the crown. And we're going to see everything come full circle in season 6. And that's why they didn't end at season 4. Charles gets his glory season finally. But I agree with...
a lot of people would say that, arguably in history, Charles fought more for Diana when she died than he did while she was alive.
I don't think that anybody would argue with you about that. I think that that's common. I mean, that's facts, if we're going to be honest. There are a few really sweet stories about Charles and Diana towards the end of her life. They were developing a friendship, but it not to the point where everything was hunky-dory, because Diana was taking those sexy pictures on boats to distract from the fact that Charles was throwing Camilla a birthday party. And she wanted to ensure that she had her photos on the cover of the magazines and the newspapers versus them celebrating Charles and Camilla at this birthday party. So there's that story I've told you a million times that I love, where Charles needs to use the restroom. So he takes his helicopter stops at Kensington Palace. They're divorced. He asks Diana if he can use the loo. She says yes. He uses the loo, walks out, and Diana chases after him outside Kensington Palace and says, "Same time next week," and winks at him. So everybody's wondering what happened inside. So there was a joy.
An understanding had formed between them, which...
Yeah, there was humor there, but it's not like they weren't where they could have been by the time that she died. And he did fight for her after she passed, and I'm sure she did appreciate it. I just don't need to see the ghost of Diana.
Well, that was going to be my final note on this, is that all sounds like it's being as respectfully done as possible until we get to the ghost of Diana visiting the then Prince Charles. I guess we're going to have to see how it pans out, but obviously that seems a little tasteless.
Yeah. You're right. I'm not going to completely judge it until I see it, but I don't know if it was necessary. It could have been done in different ways.
Okay, we've just got some time to talk about Meghan. Now, apparently, is this true? So, obviously, the Spotify deal was down the plug hole because they really didn't produce anything that was worth listening to or in any way, shape or form interesting. And now she's apparently signed with Audible.
It's not official yet, but this is something you and I have talked about on a regular basis right here on this program, on the Majesty podcast, where we have said that the Sussexes are going to try to get another gig, and they will likely have somebody else leak that they're close to signing, that it's millions of dollars that they're being offered, not because it's true, but because they don't want people to know how much their net worth fell when they lost Spotify, and people all of a sudden don't think that they are as valuable as they were before. So all of the sudden, these stories start leaking from anonymous sources that Meghan is on the verge of signing with Audible and that it's even a bigger payday than Spotify. Cristo, if you were Amazon/Audible, and not only did Harry and Meghan screw you when they left, they took their Heart of Invictus project, they took their Invictus project from Amazon Prime and moved it to Netflix along with all of their other content. So that's one, that right there, they've slapped Jeff Bezos in the face because they ripped a project about Invictus from Amazon, gave it to Netflix to secure that deal. But also Amazon is reading all of these horrible reports about their behavior, Meghan calling in last minute asking for changes.
But also as well, you know, again, when you're in the industry, there are sometimes diva-like behaviours that everyone encounters. Look at Elton John. But if they deliver, then you sort of roll your eyes and go, okay, well, they're delivering. But the point is, you can't have diva-like behaviour if what you're delivering is diabolically poor, boring, and just not interesting at all to listen to. And unfortunately, the Spotify stuff was exactly that. I mean, it was just dull. And unfortunately, when they don't have slagging off the royal family or their professional victimhood to fall back on, and they actually have to come up with content, they have nothing. And I think Audible might find themselves being, bitten on the bum a little bit with that, because it's just going to be a dull fest unless they just start going back to professional victimhood.
My take is, and I'd like to know if you agree, that this was a strategy by someone in that camp, whether it's William Morris Endeavor or whoever, but it's a strategy to try to push an Audible deal by saying, look at all the positive press we're getting. Look, everybody's so excited that we might sign with you. And I don't know if there's any legitimacy to it whatsoever. If you ask me, I'd say none at all.
Well, if it is, they have been known to put out statements and little press tidbits before. Never if it actually benefits any of the rubbish they've spoken about the royal family, only obviously if it benefits themselves. But they have been known to do that before. So I do adore your cynicism, as always. Listen, we'll let you go because I know you've got to go and do a lot more interviews this morning with the tragic news coming out of LA. So wonderful to have you as always, Kinsey Schofield, and we'll be back in a moment.